Hi everybody, welcome to our Green Schools Secondary Seminar for the Food and Biodiversity theme. My name is Claire Patton. I am Green Schools Biodiversity Officer, so I'll be your contact for any queries you have while you're working on this theme. You can always drop me an email and arrange a call. I'll share my contact details at the end of this presentation. So I'm just going to give you a bit of background on this theme, why it's important, and the main kind of areas we focus on within it. And then we'll go through the 7-step process of actually completing your work on this theme. So just to give you a little bit of information about Green Schools. Green Schools is run by the Environmental Education Unit of An Taisce. So it's quite a large umbrella organisation, and there's many other programmes within it that you might be familiar with. National Spring Clean, Clean Coasts, and many others. So we do have lots of other organisations that we often partner with that you might have a chance to get involved with while you're working on this theme. And it's an international programme. So Green Schools is run all around the world. It's generally known as eco schools in other countries. So you might hear that name if you're ever abroad. It's a long-term program, as you all know. So if you have gotten to this theme, your school has probably been working on the program for at least 20 years, which is really impressive. And we hope that it's a whole school and holistic program to work on that everyone can get involved with in different ways. And Green Schools is run in schools all throughout the country. It's in just under 90% of schools in Ireland. So it's a massive number of students and teachers working on this at any one time. And when you see the kind of the collective results of all of the actions that these schools take, it's really impressive. And the program is very much a partnership. We have the schools yourselves doing the work on the ground, but then we also really rely on our partners and supporters in industry, and the local authorities are also a great support to the schools themselves. So just to flag that you each have an environmental awareness officer for your local county council, and they're a great resource to you. This will probably be the person who's carrying out your renewal visit when you come to apply for the flag in your second year on the theme. But you can also get in touch with them before that. They can kind of direct you to possibly some local initiatives that might be helpful or give you a bit of advice. So they're a good contact to have, as well as myself. And if you don't know how their contact information, get in touch and I can direct you to them. And also, they might also be able to direct you to the biodiversity officer in your local county council. So this is a relatively new position in most councils, and these officers are likely to be running maybe projects or campaigns that you might be interested in. So it's worth asking your environmental awareness officer, is there any information that they can give you through the biodiversity officer, and is there any projects that you might be interested in getting involved with? So just as well to let everyone know that Green Schools wants to be an inclusive organization, and we're very much wanting to have everybody involved. So obviously, the sustainability of our planet is something that should be important to all of us. So regardless of your background, we want to get you involved and get you on board. And this year and next year, An Taisce are really delighted to be one of the SDG champions. So as you probably are aware of, the SDGs are the Sustainable Development Goals. And to help promote these, there has been several organisations selected in Ireland to be an SDG champion. So we're really pleased to be part of that. And the food and biodiversity theme actually has very strong links with the Sustainable Development Goals. I've kind of put here goal 2, which is zero hunger, as the theme as the goal which most closely links to the theme. But actually I could have chosen quite a few. There's really strong links with life on land, health and well-being, with responsible production. So it's just kind of to flag for yourselves that the work that you are doing on this theme very much fits into a much bigger kind of overall set of goals that are being worked on around the world. And just to show you a few stats on the impacts that green schools can have on the wider environment. These are just a few stats that we've put together from the schools that were awarded a flag last year. So we had 747 schools being awarded a flag on any of our 10 themes. So if we go back to the very beginning, the litter and waste theme, we had 73% of schools who are working on litter and waste reducing the amount of waste being sent to landfill, which is pretty amazing. And then on our biodiversity theme, for example, we had 6,737 trees planted. So it's really just to give you the idea that when you look at schools collectively, there is great things being done. It can be hard to keep that in mind when you're kind of working away in your own school. And then just to focus in a bit on the food and biodiversity theme. Last year was only the second year that we have had schools receive their green flag for this theme, so it's still very much getting started off. And in the schools that were awarded, we had on average schools planting 10 different types of food crops, and we had over 41 different types of recipes attempted with the crops that were grown. So those are really positive and practical things to see. So yeah, just to flag that you are all on the 10th theme of the Green Schools program. So it's quite a journey your schools have been on already. Probably a lot of really strong schools here that have done huge amounts of work, and probably have a lot of great things in place already. So it's great to see you've gotten this far. And now just to give you a little bit of background on the theme and why we chose it. So the Green Schools Food and Biodiversity theme is our follow-on theme from biodiversity, which is the 5th theme in the Green Schools program. And biodiversity, it can be a word that trips people up a little bit. But if you break it down, the full word would be biological diversity. So this is just meaning the different types of living things. So it refers to the variety of all kinds of life forms, from flowers and plants to animals, to things that are much smaller like bacteria and fungi. Even viruses would all be considered part of biodiversity. And so would the food that we eat. So, the food crops that are being grown would also be part of this. And in general terms, one kind of really important take-home message whenever you're talking about biodiversity is that the higher the level of diversity you have, the better it is for the planet. So the more different types of living things you have in a certain space, the healthier and the more resilient and the stronger that place that ecosystem will be. And there's many kind of positive effects of this. And there are tons of reasons why biodiversity is important. Our plants and trees providing us with clean air, and we get lots of products from biodiversity. It provides us with most of the medicines that we take, all of the food that we eat. It provides pollination for our food crops, healthy soil, important places for recreation and enjoyment. The list kind of goes on. And when we were deciding what was going to be our theme, what was going to be the relation to biodiversity, we chose food as the focus because it really kind of ticked a lot of boxes. There's great connections between food and a lot of different environmental issues. So if you look at things like litter and waste, there's a lot of big connections between food packaging, food waste, and issues like food miles, how it's processed, and how it gets from farm to fork have a lot of links with energy and travel. Water has a lot of links with the way that we grow food, how much water we need to input into it. So there was really strong links between food and all of our other themes, as well as biodiversity. And we also felt it would give really great opportunities in school for students to learn about, practical skills that you can take with you throughout your life in terms of growing and cooking. And it's also, we hope, a really enjoyable theme and beneficial for you in general. So there's a lot of research done on how getting outside, and in particular getting your hands dirty and into the soil, can have really positive effects on your overall health and well-being. There's good opportunities for teamwork and, engaging in different activities than you might kind of generally do. So there was lots of reasons for this involvement. And food is something that I think interests a lot of people. It's good to know what you're eating, what's in your diet, and being able to actually produce your own food and maybe cook with it is really important life skills to have. So that was kind of the background on how we developed this theme and why we think it's important. But now just to give you an overview on how to actually go about completing it. So with all the Green Schools themes, we have a 7-step program. So your school's probably very familiar with that now on your 10th theme, but I'll just run through it and give you some advice and ideas on each step. So step 1 is always creating a Green Schools committee. This is a group of people that are going to be kind of responsible for driving the program in the school, making decisions, coming up with ideas, and so forth. There is quite a bit of flexibility in terms of how you go about creating that committee. The essential aspects are that you must have students on the committee, and you must have one staff member who will act as the coordinator. So after that, there's a lot of kind of leeway. You can pick and choose what works for you. So you might have students from the whole student body from different year groups involved. Sometimes there'll be a lot of work done by a specific group, like a TY group, or if the coordinator is teaching a certain subject, they might be very involved with their classes. But the important thing to remember is to try and keep the rest of the student body as informed and updated as possible. So, especially in secondary school setting, you might not have very many, students from exam groups or exam years that are on the committee, and they might not have the time to get involved. So it's really important to just keep them updated through, if you have a school newsletter, Green Schools notice board, maybe you have an online platform like Teams or Moodle that you can share information on. That can be very helpful. And then you can also include other people on the committee. So it's great to have more than one staff member. And if you have any parents or family members that are, green fingered and are maybe interested in gardening or cooking, or maybe they work in an area that's related to this, they might be able to get involved. They might not necessarily be able to come to every committee meeting, but they might be willing to kind of give some of their expertise or come and give a talk or something like that. Another person for this theme that it's great to have on board is if your school has a caretaker or somebody working on the school grounds. Again, they might not be able to attend every meeting, but they might have some expertise to offer, and even just to let them know if you're going to be working on school grounds, keep them updated with what's going on, so that everyone's on the same page. And community members, if there's groups out there, maybe there's a local allotment where people are growing their own food, or a Tidy Towns group, or a men's shed that might be willing to build you some planters. It's great to reach out and just see what kind of connections can you make with the community from the committee level. So then once you have your committee in place, the next step is to carry out an environmental review. So this is basically to take stock of what the situation is in your school, with regards to, people's awareness of the connections between food and biodiversity. What kind of background do people have? Have people grown their own food before? Just to see before you start, what is that kind of knowledge base in your school? And also, what are your grounds like, or your school building like, in terms of places that you could potentially grow food? Are there any issues in your school grounds around, litter or food waste? So to assess these two things, there's two what we call essential actions. So an essential action is one that you are going to be asked about when you come to apply for your green flag. So these are really important to document and to keep record of. So the two essential actions are an awareness survey and a food habitat map. And I'll show you both of those now in a second. You can also, look in much more detail, if you like, into things like the health of your soil, more in-depth kind of investigations into your school grounds biodiversity. You can look into exactly what's already growing there, if you like. And these things can be added to your action plan, which we'll get to later. So this is the awareness survey, 7 questions. And like I said, it's trying to find out what knowledge is already there, and have people taken much practical steps with regards to growing before. You can tweak this a little bit in the format, as in, if you want to send it out online, you can do that. It can be an easier way of collecting results, especially if you have a big school. If you have a really big school, you don't have to survey every single student, but you do need to try and get good representation. So, if you have 4 different classes at each year level, maybe, just make sure you get at least 50% of students at each level responding, and just keep track of that so that you can carry it out again the following year, and it kind of syncs up. And then the second aspect is creating a food habitat map. So what this means is you're creating a map or some kind of visual representation that shows the layout of the school and grounds, and any links to growing food, producing food, storing food, etc. So this is going to be kind of your baseline for planning where is suitable for growing food. Is there any existing raised beds or window boxes, or is there any kind of open space that could be used or adapted? Is there anywhere inside the school that you could start off your growing, on windowsills and so on? So it's having a look and seeing what's there already. So here's a nice example of a food habitat map that a school sent in last year. So you can see that they drew an initial sketch, kind of like a bird's eye view of the school, and then they were able to update it then as the year went on with pictures. So to show what have they planted, how is it looking now, how it changes with the seasons. So it can be good to have this kind of option. And we do have a few resources to help you create this. So there's a lesson plan and checklist, which you can access by clicking this link. And I will share this PDF with you at the end of the seminar. And we also have a seminar recording that we did last year. So we had a kind of a step-by-step guide that we recorded with some teachers on the theme last year. So you can have a look at this beforehand and check out the presentation that goes along with it. So that's the initial kind of steps that we're looking for you to take, is set up your committee, see what the situation is in your school. And then once you have those complete, you're ready to start your action plan. So this is where you're going to set out what do you hope to achieve on this theme, and what exactly are you going to do to go about those aims. So for the action plan, probably every action you take, you're either going to be trying to increase awareness, or take practical action by growing and cooking. So when you're increasing awareness, you might be looking at increasing that knowledge of how does biodiversity link with food growing. What is the importance of attracting pollinators or attracting predators of your pest species, or increasing soil health. Or maybe it's also looking at the overall kind of global impacts of our diets. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And then the increase in practical knowledge and skills, so that a big part of this theme is going to be getting out and actually growing your own food, and then using that food to prepare some nice dishes for yourselves. So because of the nature of the theme, it is a little bit prescriptive in terms of when you are going to be carrying out these actions. So this is just a guide. It's not really strict. It's just in terms of what's going to work best in terms of the seasons. So in your first year on the theme, you'd kind of expect you to be using autumn and winter as an introduction time, as a time to set up your committee and carry out that environmental review, and maybe start looking at your growing spaces, so that when you get into spring and summer, you can focus on growing crops and harvesting and hopefully cooking or eating them. And then in year 2, the difference is in autumn and winter, we'd be asking you to pick a global topic. So I'll show you our options for global topics shortly, but this is where you're looking at what are the global kind of impacts of the foods that we eat. And then again, spring and summer, you're repeating what you've done in your first year. Hopefully, you'll have kind of learned a bit from your first year in terms of what works well, what doesn't work so well. You might be able to tweak a couple of things. So these are our suggestions for the crops to grow. These are just suggestions, so it's absolutely up to you what kind of things you want to plant on your grounds. We've picked these crops because they have growing times that are more likely to fit into the school calendar. Now, for secondary schools, it is a little bit of a more difficult kind of timing and situation, because a lot of these crops you'll see there in green are ready in June. This is so if you are planting only starting planting in March, April, the types of crops you're going to have ready by May before school finishes are the lettuces, things like radishes, spring onions, other types of onions, any kind of herbs as well. You can also choose to do things like leave your carrots and your potatoes in the ground until you come back in September. And in addition to this, this is assuming that you don't have any kind of polytunnel. If you do have a polytunnel, you can obviously start growing earlier, or depending on when the Easter holidays fall. So this year they're actually quite early, so you potentially could plant directly after that and have a better chance of having crops ready to harvest before you head off. But again, if there's a particular type of crop you want to try, obviously go for it. You do want to think about what do you actually want to eat. So if nobody you think is really going to enjoy whatever French beans, then don't grow them. So think about what you want to grow, what you actually want to eat, and what's going to be practical for your calendar. In terms of what you're going to eat, we do have lots of suggested recipes. So we have a harvest recipe booklet, which are all recipes based on those suggested crops. Every school has got different amounts of equipment in terms of cooking. So some of you might be lucky enough to have a home ec room where you have lots of equipment. If not, it might be a case of picking a couple of days in May and getting a few people to bring in some chopping boards and bowls and things to be able to make a few simple recipes. When you are planning your harvest days, think about, is there a way you could make it into a themed day or an action day? So could you host a mini farmers market where you have all of your harvest on display? And maybe you could have a school bake off. If you don't have a huge harvest, you can supplement that, bring in other ingredients from home, especially if people are growing at home. Be great to bring in that produce to show off. You could organize a sustainable lunch day where, again, you include the foods you've grown with maybe foods bought locally, or which are grown in sustainable ways. So just have a think about what ways you would like to kind of celebrate what you have grown. So here's just a few examples of growing in schools. And like I said, every school will have different amounts of space and resources. So, if you already have raised beds, that's great. But if you don't have, big areas already ready for growing, there is a lot you can do in smaller spaces, like window boxes. You can upcycle kind of old gardening equipment, and you could grow food in an old wheelbarrow, in old tires. So having a day where you can ask people to go out and check in their sheds, or is there anything that they could be used for as a container to grow food in? There's lots of things that can be grown in pots and in planter boxes. So if you don't have huge amounts of green space, that's no problem. We also do have a nice resource on creating an easy bed. So it's just basically laying down cardboard on grass or bare soil and just putting a couple of planks around it. You don't even have to nail them in. And then adding soil to that, which will eventually break down the cardboard, and it can grow right there in the ground. So we will link to that at the end. And then here's just a few examples of cooking actions. So like I said, in our recipes booklet, we have got suggestions for really simple, like no cook options, like basic salads. And then we have more complicated things like patatas bravas, pizza, shakshuka. So we have a big range of things. And do feel free to come up with your own recipes and what interests you. Some schools have held multicultural days where they cook different recipes from around the world. Maybe if you have students with links to other countries, they might be able to bring in a recipe for something that they cook at home, or specific types of ingredients that they often like to use. And that can be quite a nice action day as well. Then just moving on to our global topics. So this is something that we ask each school to do, is to pick one topic that interests them to kind of do a bit of work on. It could be project work, it could be implementing a change in your school, it could be carrying out a campaign, fundraising. There's a lot of flexibility there. So these are the 8 topics we recommend. So we have our diet and our rainforests. This focuses a good bit on the impacts of palm oil on biodiversity and how often palm oil is used in the foods that we eat. Then we have got pesticides and wildlife. Again, this is looking at the effects of using pesticides on the food that we grow, how that impacts biodiversity, and why pesticides are used. And then we have our diet and our climate. So this looks at the impact that the food that we eat has on climate change. We've got protecting pollinators, looks at the importance of pollinators in terms of growing certain foods, like strawberries. We've got food waste. This is quite a popular one. It might be one that, if you have an issue with food waste in your school, you could pick. Looking at the impact of food waste, and just how prevalent it is, how widespread it is. And we've got food miles, so looking at the journey our food makes and the impacts that has. And then there's who is your farmer. So this is looking at the people behind the growing, and the ideas of shopping locally, and maybe the working conditions for some farm workers. And then lastly, we have crop diversity. So this is looking at the types of foods that we grow and how the different types of foods that we grow is really decreased over the last 100 years. There's lots of links there to things like the Irish potato famine and things like seed saving. So there's a big diversity, a big range of choices here, although you'll find that a lot of these connect to each other. So we do have a presentation that gives you a bit of background on each and a few ideas for what you could do. We've got a global topic card for each of them, which gives lots of links to other resources that will help you. And this year we are going to be running a series of webinars in October and November that link to some of these global topics to kind of help get you started. So this is a good opportunity for you to kind of get other people involved in your school in terms of maybe picking which one you would like to focus on. So here's just a few examples. So like I said, every school will work differently. If you pick something like pollinators, for example, you might do quite a lot of practical actions in terms of trying to encourage pollinators onto your school grounds. If you focus on something like food waste or food miles, you might be working on more of a campaign to try and reduce food waste in your school or community. So, have a think about what kind of work would you like to do and what would be the best fit for that. So here's just a few of the supports we have for schools. These are all workshops that we have on our website. So our food choices and labels, and this is a good one if you're looking at something like food miles, or even our rainforests topic, where it's just helping you to notice when you're buying food, where is it coming from? How has it been processed? What can we learn from the labels in terms of what kind of impact that food has had? Our soil workshop is a nice one to try before you get into the planting, find out a bit more about the soil that you're going to grow in, because it is such an important part of growing is what our soil health is like. We also have a seeds workshop that might be a little bit more suitable for primary, but you can have a look at it, see is there any bits that you can adapt for yourself. And then our crop cards, that gives you some guidelines on how to plant the recommended crops that we have. And then we also have our recipe booklet and our YouTube playlist. I'd really recommend having a look at. It's got a lot of demonstrations. I think we have maybe 7 or 8 demonstrations that professional chefs have done on preparing some of our sample recipes. So it might just give you some ideas, and it also has a few demonstrations of some cooking skills like chopping and peeling in simple ways. And a few more ideas on what you can put on your action plan. So in terms of increasing awareness, you want to give people the opportunity to get outside and get their hands dirty, see how crops grow, what is involved in actually looking after them. Creating signage, so it's great to spread the word about what's being grown here. Is there pollinator friendly areas nearby, and things like investigating your global topics, maybe analyzing your surveys, and developing a new green code. Again, I'll come back to that. And then practical improvements. So here's a nice picture. This school didn't have raised beds. They used these grow bags for their potatoes. They worked really well. So creating growing areas, this will depend on what you already have, what space you have, and what resources you have in terms of being able to create more. So you might be focusing more on window planters if you don't have any room. You can always put pots and planters up on windowsills. Don't forget about more long-term food growing, things like planting fruit bushes, raspberries, or even trees, apple trees, pear trees, hazelnut trees. That's a great option as well if you have the opportunity to do that. And don't forget about the biodiversity side of things. You can look at creating things like bird boxes, ponds, leaf piles, leaving areas unmanaged. And all of these things will help with your growing process. So if you are attracting birds into an area where you're growing food, they can be really helpful for keeping the slugs under control. Same if you have a pond that attracts frogs, and they're going to be eating some of the things that might be nibbling on your crops. And if you're creating a leaf mold, that can eventually be used as compost for your gardening space. And by leaving areas unmanaged, you're likely to attract pollinators, which will pollinate some of your plants for you. And here's a sample of our action plan. This is in the handbook, so feel free to take ideas from this and add in your own. Important to think about, it's not just about having an action in mind. Think about who's going to take care of it, when do you want to achieve it, and it can be good to note on this, do you need to document it? Do you need to keep a record of it? And it's good to just kind of split up the workload this way, of saying, okay, maybe we can give this task to this person or to this class. Okay, then moving on to the fourth step. This is what we call monitoring and evaluation. So this is basically repeating what you did when you were carrying out your environmental review. So ideally, you're going to be doing this in the second year of your work on the theme, and you're repeating the awareness survey, and you're updating your habitat map. So you're seeing what's changed as you've worked on the theme. So if this is the exact same survey, try and do it with the same rough number of students, and from the make that you're taking in the same year groups that you did the first time around. So hopefully you see an increase in awareness. And then you can either create a new map from scratch for your second year, or you can mark in the changes that you made, what you grew in the raised beds, if you let some areas go wild, or if you added in bird boxes, etc. You can note that on the map. Step 5 then is linking the work that you are doing for this flag with the existing curriculum. So maybe you got, maybe the maths class in transition year carried out the awareness surveys, and they created charts or graphs, or they carried out stats on them. Maybe in history, one group were focusing on the Irish famine, and they linked that with the crop diversity work. Or maybe they were just learning about your local area and what kind of food was grown there previously. Maybe you ran an art competition that on the creation of posters or murals for the garden, or for around the school grounds. Step 6 then is informing and involving. So it's keeping everyone updated, and that's both within the school community and also the wider community. So families, friends, and local community members. So are you sharing what work you're doing? So maybe you can write an article for the local press, or if you have a school newsletter or blog or podcast, and whatever it is. Do let people know what you're doing. Update if you have school social media, and put up a few pictures of the plants that you're growing, or your project work. And then lastly, step 7 is to create a green code. So this is just something that sets out what your school's attitude is to the theme. It can really be in any format you like. It can be a slogan. It can be like a bigger code of conduct. It can be a song. Again, this is a nice way to involve the school community, maybe run a competition for different entries, and then make sure it's displayed somewhere that everybody can see it. Okay, so just a few upcoming events and dates for your diaries. So World Food Day is October 16th, and we're holding a webinar with Brianne from Food Cloud. So she's going to talk about the impacts of food waste in Ireland and why it's important and what kind of work organisations like Food Cloud do. And we also have some past students who completed the theme, and they're going to talk about the creation of a food waste recipe book and a few other projects that they did, trying to be helpful for some ideas. So you can register by clicking that link there. Something else to flag, there's a nice film, and we actually watched it as staff recently, that would be really suitable for secondary schools. It's called The Need to Grow, and at the moment the filmmakers have made it available free of charge on their website. You just have to give them your email and you can watch it. It's a documentary that kind of goes into some solutions to our sustainability issues, and it focuses on food and growing. So that might be something you're interested in. And this is something I'll be sending out an email about shortly. It's called the BioBus, and it's basically an exhibit that is being toured around Ireland in October and November. It's going to be in every county. And the organisers, we've kind of linked in with them a bit. They would really like to invite secondary schools to come and visit. So a class can kind of book in with them for a specific time slot, and they'll give you a tour of the exhibit. And it's all about kind of moving away from fossil fuels to do things in a more sustainable way. And they have lots of kind of interesting examples of ways of using naturally occurring ways of fueling things rather than using oil and gas. So that might be something you're interested in attending. You can click on that link to find out more, and I will be sending on an email to the coordinators shortly. Throughout October and November, we're going to have a series of webinars linked to the global topics. And we know that these can be not always suitable for secondary schools to attend because, mightn't link up with your exact timetable in terms of working around the different classes you're going to. But they will be all recorded and up on our YouTube channel, so you can watch them afterwards at a more convenient time, or share, for students to watch at home if they want. We also have World Soil Day coming up on December 5th. This can be a good time to try our soil workshop, or try a few of the experiments in that and learn a bit more about the soil you're going to plant in. And then just down to the real nitty-gritty of the actual process of applying. So if you are planning on applying for your green flag on this theme this year, then you must be in at least your second year on the theme. And there's 2 steps to apply. One is to complete our application form, which I've got a link to at the end. This has to be submitted by March 15th, 2024. And before you submit that form, you must have organised and completed your renewal visit. So that will probably be with your environmental awareness officer, and you can organise that at any stage this year. One thing to mention as well is, when you are applying, if you're applying this March, you probably won't have started much growing or harvesting, and that's fine. Don't be worried about that. We understand that a lot of the work on this theme in year 2 won't have happened yet, but it's okay to just give information about what you're planning to do. We just have to keep this date early to give us a chance to assess the applications and then hold our award ceremonies in May. So it's just a little bit funny with the calendar. And in terms of your application form, even if this is your first year working on the theme, I'd really advise that you have a look at the application form now and even start filling it in. So you can save it as you go. So if you, for example, do your awareness survey in October, you can add the results in of that now, and then that way they're saved. You don't have to worry about trying to find them again when you come back to work on the theme next year. And we have gone back to in-person award ceremonies, so hopefully they will be on again in May. Here's the website, greenschoolsireland.org. We have quite a lot of resources and presentations. Up there, you can search for them all under resources. And you can filter the types of results you get by putting in secondary school, food and biodiversity theme, etc. We also have got the most important resources together on one theme page, just because it makes it easier than you kind of going through different pages of resources. So that will also be linked at the end. One thing you might want to have a look at is a case study. We have a video case study. Now it is from a primary school, as you guys are very much ahead of most other secondary schools. So I don't have a video case study yet of a secondary school. But the primary school one, again, you might find helpful because they did some interesting projects. So I advise having a quick look at that. And then lastly, just before I finish up, I have just a few bits of information. It's not directly related to the food and biodiversity theme. We're sharing it with all of our schools. So Climate Action Week is coming up October 16th to 22nd. There's tons of events on then that you might be interested in getting involved with, on opportunities for you to get the wider student population involved there. Some of you might be interested in our Climate Ambassador program. So this program recruits people from around the country to become climate ambassadors in their own communities. So it's open to anyone really, as long you have to be a secondary school student and above. So any adults and then also secondary school students are welcome to apply. And you become basically become an ambassador, and you receive different kinds of training. You're invited to network gatherings, and you're kind of given the tools to hold events in your own communities on kind of climate action. So if you're interested, you can check out the website there. The deadline to apply is October 22nd. And then lastly, on climate, we've got a new program called Climate Smart. It's a free TY program for students. It's mostly online, so there's 7 online workshops you can carry out. But if you are based in Dublin or Cork, you can register to take part in a couple of two in-person workshops. So if you want to learn more, you can check out climatesmart.ie or get in touch at this email address, climatesmart@eeu.antashka.org. And then another free option for workshops are the SEAI Sustainable Energy Workshops. So they've got tailored secondary school workshops for TY groups, and then also specifically for Junior Cert Science, Business, Home Ec, and Geography. And they also have training available for teachers, and you can do this online or in person. So they, again, are a nice option for schools. If you would like to sign up for our newsletter, you can scan that QR code there. This can be a nice thing to keep up to date with what's going on with the whole program. So when you're hearing from me, I'll be mostly just sending you updates on what is coming up specific to the food and biodiversity program. But if you want to hear more about what's going on in the other themes, they will have some programs and projects that are open to all schools. You might want to check out the newsletter there. So we've come to the end. That's a lot of information, I know, but let it sit with you, and do feel free to get in touch with me at any stage. Unfortunately, on this theme, we don't have officers who can work in person with each school, but I'm available to chat by email, phone, or if you'd like to set up a Zoom meeting, I certainly do that. So really just want to wish you all the best of luck working on this theme. I hope you enjoy it. There's a lot of enjoyable things you can take part in. But don't hesitate to get in touch with any questions, and try your best to get involved with as many things as you can. And we do have some links on the back page here to just give you some ideas for getting started. The most important resource really is the first one there is the handbook. And hopefully you all have a hard copy of that. So each school should have received that in the post the year that you started working on the theme. And again, I'd really encourage you to take a look at the application forms now, regardless of what stage of the theme you're on. So again, thanks everybody for participating, and looking forward to working with you throughout this theme.